Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Transportation Standing Committee. My name is Catherine Morris. I'll give the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Brings us to the approval of the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? Could we approve the minutes as presented? Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Seconded by Councillor Young. Thank you. Motion carries. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk?
There are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Could I have a motion to approve the order of business? Oh, Councillor Cleary, sorry.
Thank you very much. Can I have information item number 2 brought forward to our next meeting? And I'll happily move the adoption of our order of business.
Moved by Councillor Cleary. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Purdy. And vote, please. Show of hands. And the motion carries. Thank you. Business arising out of the minutes. I see none. Does anyone want to declare a conflict of interest? I see none. Motions of reconsideration, none. Motions of rescission, none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notice of tabled matters, none. Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office. Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Correspondence was received for item 1311 and distributed to Standing Committee. I'm on autopilot at the moment.
It's okay. Thank you. 10.2 petitions. Are there any petitions for submission?
No petitions have been received by the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to 10.3, our first presentation, a discussion on rapid transit and cycling connections with Derek Belmore from Halifax Cycling Coalition. Derek, please come forward and you have the floor. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Hey, thank you. Derek Belmore. I'm District 10 here on behalf of this Halifax Cycling Coalition. So today I'm going to be talking about our transit priority measures and how it relates to our cycling as well, although mostly we're talking about the transportation piece anyways. So first off, let me clear about the importance of investing in our transit and rapid transit strategy, especially during this time of conflict in the world and the upcoming price shocks that we're going to see. We're already seeing the effects of that. And especially with the IMP updates that are being discussed today, evident, which by chance, Action 23 of the IMP update reflects a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is in response. So this is kind of a follow-up to a colleague of mine who came to the October 23rd, 2025 meeting, who spoke on my behalf. And this is a follow-up to the recommendation. So we therefore recommend that the TSC request a staff report on whether and how these developments, which was the Spring Garden pilot, as well as the lack of progress on the BRT, and whether and how these developments will affect the planned system level performance of the BRT, times to build it, and the key performance indicators like travel times BRT is aiming to achieve. We'd like to know how rapid these buses will be and if they will ever be running. So this the survey results from the citizen survey. So service reliability was top of mind for people who responded to this. You kind of see this in the proposed scheduling for the proposed BRT routes as well. You see the peak times, say for Larry Utech to Dartmouth Crossing, for example, 61 minutes on peak and off peak 47-minute travel times. So you see that reliability issue built into the BRT proposals as well. So And right following is what people really want to see is bus rapid transit and the transit infrastructure. And so there's been a lack of progress on the IMP, the rapid transit strategy, as well as I have a map of the rail link that was discussed years ago now. So it is unclear and uncertain of the progress with transit and the modal shift that we're hoping to see, in not just in transit, but in cycling as well. And where there is a priority for the municipality still, just within staff and the council as a whole. And these developments being constructed, I point to Flamingo, at the bottom of Flamingo Drive on Bedford Highway. Part of that proposal was for the rail connection that was proposed years ago. They used that when they were bringing their proposal forward for that development. And with past studies, like I mentioned, the IMP, Moving Forward Together plan, the rapid transit strategy, and the rails study, these are still things that are being considered going forward for developers at the very least, and citizens still to this day expect a lot of these to be implemented. And of course, this isn't just to us at the Halifax Cycling Coalition. It is important to broaden our modes of transportation, so the modal shift that not just in the IMP, but just in like the center plan and these upcoming suburban plan, which is going to make the modal shift much more important when developing going forward. Providing for options for less expensive, more affordable ways of getting around other than driving. So this is the outline of the planned BRT route. So as I said, there's the Larry Utech to Dartmouth Crossing section. There's the Lacewood to the universities, Bryfield to downtown, as well as Dalhousie to Portland Hills. These are the current proposed BRT routes, and they service a good chunk of the districts in the municipality, going from districts 4 to 12. One thing of note is that not only do these routes provide express routes for these districts, but also provides the opportunity for feeder routes from the neighboring districts that aren't currently served by the BRT routes. It allows for these feeder routes, as well as the last mile transportation like cycling and walking, to feed into these BRT routes as well. So there's kind of a pessimistic outlook when it comes to the goals of the BRT. So the target is 70% at most mode share and 16% on transit, 14 on active. But as of the 21 census, 81.5% of people are driving today. Only 8.1% are taking transit. Walking and cycling is at 8%. And so with this outlook at this time, it's like, what do we hope to achieve with this BRT still? And so we're in year 6 of what was supposed to be an 8-year plan approved in 2020. The only upgrades that are on the table right now are the Mill Cove Ferry and Portland Street. So the discussions are going forward for the Portland Street. I know that Herion Cove is coming up recently. Budgetary constraints are becoming more pronounced by the day, as we have seen with the discussions the past while. And the only part that is getting funding is the Mill Cove Ferry. And I think it's important to note as well that less than 1 kilometer of the Robie Street bus lanes that are being proposed for the land purchases, far greater than the fully proposed BRT investments over the next what was supposed to be 7 to 8 years. And what really spurred this was the Spring Garden to pilot decision to basically nix the project. It's important to remind everyone that is like the citizens and staff and council selected the transit priority option, the design option for Spring Garden Road. So it's like, so as it is right now, the pilot is just basically to design Spring Garden as it was supposed to be, which is transit priority. And the most recent decision for the Windsor Street as well doesn't have bus priority as the main goal, unfortunately. And the future transit priority implementation aren't provided for the rest of Spring Garden, which were discussed a few years ago, as well as the Winter Street Exchange Phase 1. So I do think there's a solution to this. As I mentioned, Action 23 recommends a quick implementation of the BRT, or interim quick implementation. So this is a proposed route from page 28 of the Rapid Transit Strategy. It outlines the lanes that could be allocated for BRT. So, of course, painted bus lanes are cheap and quick to build. Full signal priority for intersections along the routes would have to be proposed as well, just to make this as rapid as possible. Less need for major land purchases with proper signal priority as well by doing this, because it's like, if you have priority for buses, so as soon as the bus gets the signal, they have the signal to go through. So I know it's like the way the phased signal approach that's on most of our roads, that doesn't really help with the reliability or the speed of the buses. So if you have, as soon as the bus gets there, it changes. And this is how most systems around the world are designed as well, is like transit comes first when it comes to signal priority. Little things to consider as well. So the McDonald Bridge, Shabukto are examples of where single lane bus priority lanes would be very beneficial. The rest of Commodore, Mumford to the bus terminal, Dutch Village, and Joseph Howe as well as the rest of Spring Garden are places where 2-lane buses could be done. I should clarify the west end of Shabukto would be the single lane going up to the roundabout. The east side would be the 2-lane option. All right, and this is a lane configuration that would be proposed. So the top is the current conditions. The middle is the Lacewood, what could be. Easy at lane allocation, very quick implementation. And at the bottom slide just shows what could be the future going forward, given the amount of space available. And this is a single lane configuration option. It could be for Herring Cove or Kearney Lake Road. And Barrington Street today, for the top part of the northern section, shows the options today. And just some inspirations I want to show everyone as well, that we can get the electric buses here, and even the bi-articulated. That's time for me, unfortunately. I'm sorry. And here we are.
Thank you, Derek. Are there any questions of clarification from committee members? I don't see any questions of clarification. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not buzzing in here. It's because I'm not looking at the right screen. Okay. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Just a comment, maybe more so. I appreciate the perspective on moving quicker in a tactical kind of way with bus rapid transit. I do have a motion on Tuesday for regional council, so I see something like this as very much aligning with that motion that I already have underway. So thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually just only recently found out about that motion a few days ago, so I'm really glad to see that coming forward. And I do wish the best on that motion. And would you say that this mostly covers of what you're hoping to see coming forward with that motion?
We're getting a little beyond
Okay.
questions of clarification here. I wish we could have more dialogue, but we'll stick to the format. So I guess we'll have to see on Tuesday. Okay. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. But there is some good language in what I'm seeing for the IMP that lines up with Councillor Austin's motion too. So my question, Derek, was could you talk about that Flamingo Drive thing you were talking about? I didn't quite catch it or understand.
So okay, good. So the proposal, this was back, I think, 2017, 2018. Part of that proposal was that they used the proposed rail service throughout the area. So there was a Rockingham station proposed right beside Mount St. Vincent, and part of the developer's proposal was to say that because this was being considered by the municipality, that they wanted to put forward that this would be great transit-oriented development that would be put here.
Interesting. Okay, not just BRT, but rail. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies. I came in a bit late. I wanted to hear your entire presentation, but I was at another meeting and took a little while to get across town. My question is, you referenced Mill Cove in your presentation, and you referenced it in the context of BRT. Can you say a bit more about that, please?
So the Mill Cove proposal is part of the rapid transit strategy, of course. I mainly mention it because that is what is guaranteed funding at this time. And my main reason for this presentation is that even though we're not getting funding for the full BRT at this time, there are quick solutions we can do, like putting in the, just reallocating the road space for the bus lanes. In relation to this would be like the feeder routes that I was talking about earlier. So these buses would feed into the Mill Cove, as well as there'd be connections between Larry Tech. It's basically like an integrated system is what I'm trying to talk about, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, Derek. That brings us to public participation. And speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. After everyone on the list has been given an opportunity to speak, I will call for additional speakers. Speakers can participate in person or on Zoom. And this afternoon we have a speaker on Zoom, Catherine Curvin. Do we have Catherine up and ready to go?
I am here. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you very much for allowing me to present. And I've also requested to come to the I've also requested to come to the April meeting. Yeah, sorry, I inadvertently muted myself. I was trying to hide my self-view. So I know I have a short time. I'm here representing two organizations. One is the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. I'm a retired family doctor, and since I retired 3 years ago, I've been focused on environmental issues. I'm also representing a newly formed group, Vision Zero Kjipuktuk, Halifax, which is a coalition of residents, families, health professionals, advocates, community leaders. And our clear vision is no loss of life is acceptable on our roads. I'm speaking to the IMP. As we all know, HRM roads and streets are becoming increasingly congested and dangerous. As far as I can tell, and I hope these numbers are accurate, in 2024, there were 11 fatalities on HRM roads. In 2025, that rose to 19, so definitely going in the wrong direction. And since this council began its work in November of 2024, there have been at least 30 deaths and serious injuries. And each death and serious injury is a person whose life and family have been devastated, often with years-long impacts. A young friend of mine was in a serious car crash almost a year ago. He broke both his legs and one of his arms. He was in hospital for weeks at great expense to the healthcare system, I would add. He lost his job, his apartment, and is now struggling with a landlord who wants to evict him. And last week was the 5-year anniversary of the 3 days in March 16th to 19th, after my partner was hit by a pickup while crossing with the light at Kempt Road in Yonge Street. He spent 3 days in ICU, and we decided to move life support on the 19th. So this is the 5th anniversary of his death. and 5 children, grandchildren, brothers, sister, nieces are still devastated by his loss. So the only acceptable goal really is the Vision Zero, no loss of life on our streets and roads by 2030. And to someone who might say, is this realistic? I would ask, what is the number of devastated families that is acceptable? I also want to underline the long-term insidious effect of traffic-related air pollution on health, which is much worse for children and pregnant people. Traffic-related air pollution advances chronic disease, diabetes, asthma, heart disease. Of great concern, it affects children's neurodevelopment, and it affects everyone's mental health. So more cars, more illness and disability for all of us. And I also want to underline that car use, not road capacity, is the obstacle. We also support Councillor Austin's motion to repurpose roads, and there's a lot of detail in the documents that I believe you've received this morning. So in order to prove this worsening safety record, we have to significantly reduce the number of cars. We have to make cycling, walking, rolling safe and transit reliable and frequent. My one immediate, simple, and cost-effective suggestion is to put a moratorium on widening roads and co-funding new highways. It's one of the few ways municipal governments can save money is by not widening or building more roads. So I'm sure you all became councillors to make our city better, healthier, more livable, and I appreciate the hard work you're doing for the good of the public. And I hope you'll make decisions and choices for safer roads. Every member of every family deserves to come home safely and alive at the end of the day. Thank you. Have I gone over time?
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you. That brings us to David Truman. David is joining us in person.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Transportation Standing Committee. I'm here representing the Halifax Cycling Coalition to speak about the proposed IMP update. We, along with Walk and Roll Halifax, wrote a long letter that was sent to you detailing a lot of serious concerns with the update. But in 5 minutes, I'm going to emphasize only the most important point. The numbers are in the IMP update, but they don't tell the whole story. Perhaps the authors didn't want to scare you. Let's do the math. If you reference the graphic, that's my only slide, you'll see, as in the IMP, HRM population will double by 2050. Right now, 19% of people use sustainable modes to get around: walking, cycling, rolling, transit. Excuse me. With the best case scenario of moving to 30% sustainable mobility, as is in the IMP update, we go from approximately 350,000 to 605,000 vehicles on our roads. Can you even imagine having 73% more vehicles on our streets? Do you want to be the ones who approved the plan that subjects Haligonians to this nightmare of congestion, aggressive driving, frustration, and yes, to Kathy Chervin's point, more deaths on our roads? So what's the alternative? If we aim for 50% sustainable mobility share, combined with transportation demand management and smart signal management, we could enjoy a city that functions well, better than today, and is a lot more vibrant to live in. How can we possibly achieve 50% share? Well, Vancouver has already done it and aims for even more, 66% by 2040. How? By boldly investing in transit and bike lanes. Montreal has achieved 53% sustainable mobility share. Is there a more vibrant city in all of Canada than Montreal? Well, maybe Halifax, we'll see. The city of Victoria has achieved a 13% share just for cycling, 4 times what it was before they set out to boldly invest in cycling infrastructure with a complete, connected, and safe network. So it can be done. Did you know that we have one neighborhood in Halifax, I happen to live in it, where we have already achieved an 18% share for cycling? If we can do it in one neighborhood, why can't we do it in more neighborhoods? We can. So bold leadership means making changes. Changes are never comfortable, but change almost always is accepted over time. Take Vancouver. Council decided to be bold and complete a grid of protected cycling lanes in the downtown. The Business Association was up in arms against the plan. Years later, once implemented, they have publicly admitted on the record that it was a very positive change and have enthusiastically embraced it. And in Toronto, the Bloor Street bike lanes were very controversial, facing tremendous opposition. Council went ahead and implemented them. Now retail business has increased. The business groups have been on the front lines speaking out against Doug Ford's attacks on the bike lanes. And emergency response times have improved since the Bloor Street bike lanes went in. Summing up, the IMP update falls far short of what we need to keep up with the mobility needs in Halifax for the coming decades. We urge you to send it back for public and stakeholder engagement and revision. Ask staff to deliver a plan for 50% sustainable mobility modal share. Be brave, be bold. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up, we have Ben Hammer speaking to us. Thank you.
Let's see if I can fit this in my 5. Hi, I'm Ben Hammer. I'm here representing myself, and I'm here to speak to the state of the BRT network. I'm tired of people demanding BRT funding when there really isn't anything to fund. We need more buses, and bundling it as a rapid transit project does unlock some funding opportunities, but it won't really deliver on being rapid, and it will be held up by sharing bus lanes with local routes. Yes, BRT would require substantial capital investment from upper levels of government, but there are few, if any, capital costs identified yet for the province and feds to fund. The only provincially funded piece to date is the property acquisition on Robie Street, but widening Robie does more to expropriate lucrative lands for redevelopment and nothing to improve transit. The 2020 Rapid Transit Strategy projects 1 to 2 minutes of travel time savings on Robie between Yonge and Smew. Curbside bus lanes on the Robie south of Kennard will reduce travel times more than a southbound lane between Kennard and Alman. Buses may appear most behind schedule on Robie between Kennard and Alman, but that's the delays that have accumulated on the route beforehand, not that section delaying buses. We need more and better data, and I'm happy to see Action 3 in the IMP update, but we also need better data literacy. When Transit presented its KPIs last TSC meeting, they blamed the drop in boardings on the fare increase in 2024, not the drop in on-time performance from 70 to 67%. My Uber ride here today was $4.92. Why would I pay $3 to get here 15 minutes late in the rain? I want to use transit, but it's failed me more and more over time. There's a phenomenon known as BRT creep, and I see it happening here. Full BRT has the grade-separated right-of-way and off-board fare collection that makes rail efficient, with the routing flexibility and lower capital costs of buses. BRT creep is when the elements that make BRT rapid are value engineered out. The result is a bus route with additional branding and slightly better bus stops. We need a plan to scale up our bus fleet, a plan to expand depot capacity for a bigger fleet, a workforce development plan to recruit the drivers and mechanics we'll need to operate more buses. These things can be a part of the BRT bundle, and doing so may unlock more funding opportunities. IMP item 24, to develop a marketing and communications plan for the BRT, speaks to the lack of clarity at the moment on what BRT could look like in an HRM context. The overuse of consultants has left HRM limited in its ability to build and retain institutional knowledge, leverage experience from the planning stage for more effective project delivery and implementation. The overuse of consultants has created financial incentives for HRM staff to jump ship to the private sector, leaving ever fewer in-house staff to speak to projects. I'd like to thank Mark, Siobhan, Mike, and Patricia for being here and being among the few staff remaining from the era when the IMP and rapid transit strategies were developed. They hold organizational knowledge that is priceless, and I know how much more their experience would be valued in the private sector, and I hope they don't jump ship. If BRT branding is needed to access more provincial and federal funding opportunities in this era of austerity, I think it's reasonable continuing to firm up the concept as a cohesive bundle of fleet expansion, workforce development, and bus stop enhancements. But I think we need a much more fulsome conversation about the trajectory of our transit system, both our current conventional routes and future rapid network. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any additional speakers on our list, so I'll ask if there's anyone in the gallery who would like to speak. Ah, we do have someone who would like to speak. Please come forward. You'll have 5 minutes. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. My name is Bill Campbell. I'm director of Walk and Roll Halifax, where we want every route in Halifax to be safe, comfortable, and interesting. I'm here to make comments on the proposed Integrated Mobility Plan update 13.1.1 on your agenda. I have 3 comments extracted from the written co-submission from the Cycling Coalition and ourselves. The comments are about the evidence supporting the conflict of new sidewalk construction and emergency vehicle response time, the proposed new equity pillar, and the need for an engagement program. But before I make my comments, the update contains many good actions, some carried over from the existing IMP and some new. For context, we'd like 2 of you to recall, 2 senior councillors, to recall the joy that was experienced by so many people on December 5th, 2017, when this committee unanimously approved the Integrated Mobility Plan. For those councillors who were not present, December 5th was truly a hinge point in HRM transportation planning, the result of an extensive public engagement process. The plan recognized and prioritized active transportation. I believe its adoption and use has also shaped the organization. Your public works, planning, and public safety ranks are staffed by young professional talent committed to changing the way HRM residents access their daily out-of-home activities. We also believe that the updated plan needs to perpetuate and accelerate these changes. So, my comments. Emergency vehicle response time. In the priority and trade-off section of the staff report, page 5, accompanying the update, it reads in part that adding new features like sidewalks can result in potential increases to response times for emergency vehicles. We'd like to learn more about this relationship between new sidewalks and emergency vehicle response time and the evidence that supports that statement, if you could. The equity pillar. We want to understand the need to add a 5th pillar, equity. When Rod McPhail, Tanya Davis, and her colleagues, Mike, Mark, prepared the original plan, they infused it with equity principles, as evidenced by reading the pillars, which continue in the updated plan. These equity principles have guided our advocacy work and our input to HRM transportation plans. These equity principles were in place during the development of the Dartmouth North AT plan, an exemplary example of the use of equity principles. Anyone aware of this plan could see their effective use. I don't know why an additional pillar is required at this time. Also, HRM is also undertaking the development of a comprehensive equity-based policy framework. The framework aims to help staff and council focus more on equity when considering new community infrastructure. And the infrastructure in that scope include active transportation and transit. We are curious why resources need to be assigned to this proposed equity initiative when the current plan has been used effectively and there is a parallel contracted process underway. Finally, comment 3, public engagement. Given that nearly 10 years has elapsed since the adoption of the plan, in the spirit of the plan's original engagement process and the challenges the successful implementation of the updated plan faces, both described in the report and by my colleague David earlier, we strongly recommend that the committee approve recommendation alternative number 2 in the staff report to undertake a public engagement process with the stakeholders to share perspectives and collaborate to create a stronger action plan that will truly serve HRM. Thank you for your attention. Oh, one more thing. 3 years ago, the TSC requested a staff report on the development of a structured and proactive approach to plan, design, and evaluate infrastructure projects that is consistent with the IMP. It would be based on complete streets hierarchy of priorities, inverted triangle, with appropriate weight being given to equity deserving population as outlined in the IMP pillars. So you did that 3 years ago. Apparently, the response to your request is addressed in one of the IMP update actions. We ask you to satisfy yourself that this has been addressed completely in your reading of the update. Now that's my end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate you coming forward. Is there anyone else in the gallery who would like to speak? Anyone else in the gallery who would like to speak? Anyone else in the gallery who would like to speak? Okay, that closes our public participation part of the meeting. And there are no information items brought forward, so that brings us to staff reports and the Integrated Mobility Plan Action Update with Siobhan Witherby and Mike Connors.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm Mike Connors, Manager Transportation Planning, and I'm here with my colleague Siobhan Witherby, who's a project manager with our transportation planning team, also the lead for the IMP Action Update. We're very happy to be here today to provide an overview of the Integrated Mobility Plan Action Update. I'm going to start the presentation with some background information on the IMP at a very high level. A bit of a summary on implementation to date before handing things over to Siobhan, who's going to take you through some of the details on the process of reviewing and updating the IMP action plan. Starting with some background. So the IMP is a transportation strategy that was unanimously approved by Regional Council in December 2017, just over 8 years ago. It sets a bold vision for HRM's approach to transportation and mobility with an overarching objective of improving the efficiency and sustainability of how people and goods move about the region. The IMP supports growth, development, and the transportation of goods and people of all ages and abilities using all modes, including walking, cycling, transit, and motor vehicles consistent with direction from the regional plan. As we will discuss in this presentation, a lot has changed both locally and abroad over this eight-year period. But the IMP's vision continues to hold up and play an important role in HRM's ability to grow and thrive. So the IMP was developed starting in 2016 in response to a range of challenges that the municipality was faced with related to transportation and land use planning. The 2014 regional plan had set aggressive targets for transportation mode share, envisioning that at least 30% of people would use transit and active transportation to move about the region by 2031. And at most 70% using private automobiles. Census data released in 2016 indicated that HRM was trending away from these targets, and concerns began to rise about the significant investments required in the road network to meet future travel demand based on this trend. There was also a lack of overarching strategy linking individual mode-specific functional plans and recognition that more consideration of land use planning and its two-way relationship with transportation planning was required. So the IMP was built on four pillars and key principles. The pillars: connected, healthy, affordable, and sustainable. The key principles: complete communities, moving people instead of focusing solely on moving vehicles, managing congestion instead of attempting to eliminate it, and integrating solutions, recognizing there's no one solution to mobility challenges. So flowing from the IMP's pillars and principles, these are the core objectives of the plan: achieving the municipality's mode share targets and reducing auto dependency, supporting healthy, safe, and connected communities, reducing the environmental impacts of transportation, improving access to and the affordability of transportation options, better integration between transportation and land use planning, and finally, improving how we collaborate internally between staff and externally with other partners. Through the process of engagement on this IMP plan update, we'll admit that not everyone agreed on everything that the IMP has to offer, but we didn't come across anybody who disagreed with this set of objectives. So I wanted to take a moment to try to clarify the intent and scope of the IMP by outlining what it is, and equally important, what it is not. The IMP is first and foremost a strategic vision for mobility across the region. Its purpose is to increase mobility choices, decrease reliance on private automobiles, improve safety, and support sustainable growth. It is not a plan that's designed to make driving harder or to force people to choose other modes. Second, the IMP is a set of principles and priorities that provide a framework for evaluation and context-sensitive decision-making. It is not a plan that calls for investment in every mode on every street. Finally, the IMP is a multi-year action plan that guides implementation and informs capital planning. It is not a capital infrastructure plan. While it informs the capital planning process, Council ultimately makes capital spending decisions through the municipal budget process. So the original IMP included 137 actions that guided implementation across all transportation areas. These actions were categorized by mode or subject area, time frame, level of effort, and resource needs. As Siobhan will describe in a few moments, this very extensive list of actions could arguably have been quite a bit more concise. And that's one lesson that we've learned and applied through this update process. Nevertheless, it has provided us with a good basis for evaluating what's been completed, what remains, and what needs to be updated. So looking at implementation status for the 137 IMP actions, approximately 3/4 of the actions are now complete. This includes 52 actions, or 38%, that are discrete deliverables that have been completed as part of the delivery of the plan. It also includes another 52 actions, or 38%, that are considered complete but now categorized as updated daily practice. These actions typically involve process-related functions that have been absorbed into municipal daily practices. There are 28 actions, or 20%, that are currently in progress but not completed. And finally, 5 actions, or about 4% of total, that have not yet been started. So speak a little bit about implementation successes and challenges. The plan has played a significant role in changing the way we think about transportation as an organization. A key outcome has been increased collaboration and a shared understanding and commitment among staff to working together to implement the plan. It has also driven an updated approach to planning, design, and implementation of the transportation network to better meet current needs. This includes a more deliberate approach to setting priorities, understanding alternatives, and decision-making. The IMP has also been a key driver for several subsequent strategies, including the Rapid Transit Strategy, the Road Safety Strategy, Halifact, and the Centre Plan. These plans have built on the IMP's vision and helped advance implementation in important ways. Infrastructure is, of course, a critical part of the IMP, and significant progress has been made on several fronts. Many streets across the municipality, Many streets across the municipality have been upgraded to fill sidewalk gaps, make connections in the cycling network, and add transit priority to key corridors. Making these connections provides significant benefits both locally and as part of the implementation of wider networks. Almost 9 kilometers of new dedicated bus lanes have been built, highlighted by Bears Road, which is among the more challenging and complex projects undertaken since adopting the IMP. And speaking of challenging projects, the recently completed Cogswell District highlights the updated street design standards that are in practice, incorporating raised and separated bicycle lanes, among several other features. More broadly, the active transportation network has seen significant extension, including the addition of 36 kilometers of all ages and abilities bikeways in the regional center and upwards of 22 kilometers of multi-use pathways in suburban and rural areas of the municipality. So along with implementation successes, it's also important to reflect on the challenges that we've faced. On the infrastructure side, the very complex nature of some of the more transformational projects has resulted in implementation challenges. Over the past several years, construction costs have increased significantly, and overall cost to implement IMP recommended projects has exceeded initial estimates. There have also been difficult trade-offs that have needed to be considered on street reconfiguration projects, impacts to property, utilities, trees, and other street uses such as traffic capacity and on-street parking. These factors have contributed to delays in the delivery of several projects and initiatives, from the Regional Center AAA Bikeway Network to strategic corridor projects such as Roby Street, Bears Road, and the Bedford Highway. These challenges have been exacerbated by rapid population growth in recent years, which has put significant pressure on existing infrastructure and increased congestion in the network. Finally, implementation of the IMP has been hampered by a lack of effective metrics for tracking progress. These implementation challenges have been informative and have provided lessons learned that have been applied through this update process. I'm going to pass it over to Siobhan now, who will provide an overview of the IMP action update.
Thank you, Mike. This next section of the presentation will focus on the rationale and process for updating the IMP action plan, as well as some highlights of the results. In the 8 years since the IMP was approved by Regional Council, the municipality has experienced several significant changes that have impacted transportation across the region. The largest has been rapid and unprecedented population growth, where the municipality has grown by approximately 20% since the plan was approved. This has surpassed the 2031 population projections of around 500,000 residents. As population continues to grow, so does the demand on our transportation system. The COVID-19 pandemic changed the way people work and move around their communities, and these new behaviors should be reflected in the plan. A sharp rise in hybrid and remote work, as well as the sudden drop and rebounding of transit ridership, are key outcomes for transportation that were brought on by the pandemic and continue to have lasting impacts. Rapid inflation in recent years has made the price of housing, goods, and services increase. This has increased the cost of living for residents and put significant budget pressures on the municipality to provide infrastructure and services. Cost of living increases underscore the importance of a transportation system that is affordable and accessible to all residents. In the last 5 years, there has been a shift towards provincial involvement in regional transportation planning. In 2021, the provincial government created Link Nova Scotia, formerly known as the Joint Regional Transportation Agency, to oversee the coordination of this planning within an hour's drive, the estimated commuter shed of Halifax. In addition, several new plans and strategies with linkages to the IMP have been developed that guide municipal priorities, growth, and transportation. The Halifax Climate Action Strategy includes the goal of decarbonizing our transportation network. The strategy assumes full IMP implementation and meeting of our mode share targets in order to realize this goal by 2050. The Rapid Transit Strategy includes a recommendation to implement higher order transit, including fast ferries and bus rapid transit, or BRT, service. These transit improvements are seen as crucial to the municipality's ability to achieve its mode share targets and continue to grow in a sustainable manner. The Centre Plan focuses significant levels of growth along existing transit routes and future growth nodes in strategic locations relative to the multimodal transportation network. And Regional Council's 2026 to 2030 strategic priorities include a priority of moving better, which is addressed directly by this IMP update. Alongside the creation of Link Nova Scotia, there have been some significant legislative changes. Nova Scotia Bill 24 was proclaimed in July 2025, which gives the Provincial Minister of Public Works increased authority related to transportation in municipalities, including HRM. Among other things, it grants the province the ability to build, change, or remove transportation infrastructure within the municipality. These changes have a potentially significant impact on how the transportation system in HRM is planned and managed. In August 2025, the province released the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, which provides a strategic direction for mobility and goods movement at a regional level. The RTP was also accompanied by a government response, which prioritizes initiatives aimed at providing short-term relief from traffic congestion. The goals and actions included in the RTP are largely in alignment with the IMP and the proposed action update, with an emphasis including establishing fast and frequent rapid transit network and improving the safety and people-moving efficiency of our roadways, with strategic investment and technology advancements like a transportation management center. The IMP and RTP both seek to manage congestion, and the IMP focuses on how to prioritize impact at the more detailed municipal level. HRM staff continue to be engaged with Link Nova Scotia and other provincial partners to advance projects of shared interest. In 2017, the IMP called for improvements to road safety to maximize the safety and security of all people on the street, with an emphasis on vulnerable road users. This led to the creation of the Strategic Road Safety Framework in 2018, which was followed by the Road Safety Strategy in 2024. A key component of the strategy is adopting a Vision Zero approach to road safety, which aims to achieve zero fatalities and serious injuries for all road users by 2038. Vision Zero can be achieved by using a safe systems approach, where the transportation system is designed to minimize the chances of road users making mistakes and to limit the severity of consequences when mistakes do occur. The safe system approach includes 6 key components of a road safety system that together can reduce the occurrence of serious injuries and fatalities. Road safety is ultimately at the core of the HRM, and the actions directly influence 4 elements of the safe systems approach, with a focus on safer infrastructure and land use planning. When approaching the IMP action update, the following objectives guided the process. The first objective was to triage the original list of 137 actions to understand and document which actions have been completed, what is in progress, and what actions are still left to implement. This was then filtered through the lens of our current municipal priorities, including what's changed since 2017. There was an opportunity to revisit many actions, to consolidate effort, remove repetition, and introduce a few new elements that may not have been spoken to directly in the IMP that are deemed important considerations in 2026. The objective was to emerge with a more concise list of actions necessary to help meet our mode share targets and IMP objectives over the next 5 to 10 years. An effort was made to improve the consistency of the actions and create SMART actions, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based, where meaningful progress could be made by end of plan. Lastly, a focus of this update was to better define and prioritize which actions will have the largest impact and are the most critical to focus on in coming years. The process to update the IMP action plan has involved several rounds of internal review across multiple business units at HRM, as well as with Council. To start, staff across multiple business units reviewed each of the original 137 actions to classify implementation status and determine next steps. This accompanied a discussion of gaps, priorities, and alignment updates to be included in the action update. The results were consolidated into an updated action list. Staff in each of the relevant business units provided detailed feedback on their respective sections. Mayor Fillmore and the 16 councillors were engaged in small groups to discuss the evolving IMP priorities and provide feedback on key themes and takeaways of the action plan update. Feedback from these sessions was largely positive in continued support of the IMP vision and principles. Some additional priorities identified in these sessions were incorporated into the action list, for example, improving transit access in rural areas. External partners, as well as some advocacy groups, were given the opportunity to provide feedback on the high-level themes and takeaways from the action update. Groups included Nova Scotia Health, Walk and Roll, CNIB, Cycling Nova Scotia, Ecology Action Centre, and Halifax Cycling Coalition. Most of these participants were involved in the engagement process for the original 2017 IMP and were able to comment for continuity purposes. As part of the planning process, HRM staff also engaged with the province, including Link Nova Scotia, to ensure alignment of this IMP action update with their work on the Regional Transportation Plan. To reflect these changes, an IMP action update report was prepared as included in Attachment 1 of the Council report. In the development of this plan, 2 consultants from Fathom Studio and Mobility Foresight were engaged as peer reviewers to provide critical review of the actions and ensure that the plan aligns with best practices in mobility planning. The IMP action update has now reached Transportation Standing Committee with the recommended action list for consideration. As a result of the IMP action update process, the original set of 137 actions has been refined down to an updated list of 39 actions to focus on over the next 5 to 10 years. This significant reduction reflects the progress that has been implemented to date, where 104 of the original 137 actions have either been completed or incorporated as updated daily practice. 6 actions were removed due to limits in jurisdiction or lower near-term priority for implementation. 30 actions were carried over into this IMP action update, which were consolidated into the 18 meaningful actions for implementation. This accounts for some repetition. For example, where actions related to data, monitoring, and education campaigns were mentioned across multiple chapters. 21 new actions were added as a result of the engagement with internal staff, counselors, and community interest groups. In many cases, these are considered follow-up to an original action. For example, studying the feasibility of a particular feature or program moves to implementation of the program, with more components added to the delivery of the program. A full list of the 39 actions can be found in Attachment 1 of the Regional Council report. 69 of the original actions were classified as updated daily practice. This is a new classification created to reflect the original IMP actions that are generally high-level or process-based and have been successfully absorbed into routine municipal business processes. As a result, they may not need a standalone mention as we hone in on the remaining priority actions for implementation. Some examples include periodic review of municipal design guidelines, policies, and standards, like the multimodal level of service framework and the municipal design guidelines. Other examples include promotion of transit and active transportation to youth, as well as processes that consider opportunities to incorporate complete street design features into standard street rehabilitation projects. A list of the actions considered updated daily practice can be found in Attachment 1 of the Regional Council report, and the implementation effort continues behind the scenes alongside this updated action list. The following graph is a breakdown of the updated IMP actions by focus area. For continuity, the action plan update uses the same chapter structure as the original IMP. Across the 39 actions, the following key themes emerged from this action update. The first is expanding the provision of transit priority across the municipality, with a focus on building a network of dedicated transit lanes that improve our readiness for future rapid transit. This includes buses as well as integration with ferries, for example, Mill Cove. The next theme is prioritizing key initiatives for walking, rolling, and cycling, which includes completion of the All Ages and Abilities cycling network, as well as filling critical sidewalk gaps in the pedestrian network with a lens of equity and accessibility. The actions speak to improving the efficiency of the roadway network and leveraging technology to maximize use of our existing infrastructure, for example, by implementing electronic photo enforcement and establishing a transportation management center. An overarching theme is developing improved data and evaluation strategies to monitor the success and impact of the infrastructure changes at a project level and a system level towards achieving our mode share targets from the regional plan. Lastly, there is a theme of collaboration with provincial partners, including Link Nova Scotia, on projects of shared interest, including implementing the regional transportation plan. The IMP action update also recommends the introduction of a 5th pillar, that is equity. This pillar recognizes that there are diverse needs and vulnerabilities for historically underserved groups and communities, and that specific initiatives and considerations may be required to better serve all people in the municipality. Alongside connected, healthy, affordable, sustainable, this new equity pillar would be used to guide project planning and evaluation of mobility-related projects to strive towards serving all residents and communities equitably. I'll hand back to Mike.
Thank you, Siobhan. Excuse me. A few more slides to finish. So we'll now take a few moments to discuss the Complete Streets approach, which was a key outcome of the IMP and has become an important part of the process of making improvements to the transportation network. The Complete Streets approach represents a more holistic approach to street planning and design. It's not a municipal policy, but rather a set of guiding principles that informs the design process. The visuals shown on this slide are 2 key components of the Complete Streets approach that are an important part of establishing the context for street design projects. The Complete Streets hierarchy, shown on the left, is an inverted triangle that orders priority based on mode, with people who walk at the top and people who drive alone at the bottom. On the right, the link place spectrum highlights the wide range of street types that exist in the network based on their functionality. On one end of the spectrum, a pure link is a roadway focused primarily on moving vehicles, for example, a 100 series highway. The opposite end of the spectrum, a pure place, is a people-focused street with more emphasis on an environment that people may want to stay in and enjoy rather than simply passing through, for example, Argyle Street. In reality, most streets fall somewhere between these 2 extremes, serving both as links and places to varying degrees. For this reason, an important early step in the Complete Streets design process is applying these tools to establish project context and mode priorities. There's been recent interest from Council in the Complete Streets process, including 2 approved motions from TSC focused on the Complete Streets approach and how it's applied in practice. This IMP action plan update includes proposed actions that would update and formalize the approach to planning, design, and evaluation of projects to provide increased transparency and clarity around how priorities are established and how trade-offs are managed. As mentioned earlier, implementation has been a challenge over the last several years, with increased construction costs and budget constraints. To reduce costs, Complete Streets improvements are typically integrated into planned street rehabilitation and utility work wherever possible. This is the most cost-effective and least disruptive approach to making transformative changes to streets and has yielded considerable benefits on many projects completed to date. However, even when bundled with street rehab work, there has been a lot of variability in incremental costs in the incremental cost of Complete Streets improvements, depending on the type of project. Both the scale and variability of these incremental costs have exceeded what was originally anticipated by staff. With current budget pressures that HRM is facing, it will become increasingly important to be strategic in deciding where, when, and how to incorporate these improvements with an eye to focusing them where they can have the greatest impact. Skip that one. So, financial resource implications. For the purposes of a high-level summary of financial and resource implications, the actions have been categorized as follows. Internal initiatives, including projects and programs that will be completed by internal staff. These are considered cost neutral for the purposes of financial implications, but staff time will be required. Studies completed with consultants to complement staff's ability to develop and initialize recommended projects and programs. Infrastructure projects and programs, these will have significant implementation costs for planning, design, and construction, and funding from other orders of government will be necessary for many of them to proceed. Of the 39 total actions, 16 will be completed by staff, 9 are already incorporated in the 26-27 4-year capital plan, and 14 actions are not currently budgeted for, but will be considered in future capital and operating budgets for Council's consideration. So to wrap up, we'll leave you with some concluding thoughts before giving you the staff recommendation. First, the IMP action update is a key next step in advancing the integrated mobility plan. It refines the original action list and focuses efforts on the initiatives that will have the biggest impact. Implementing this updated list of 39 actions will help continue building a more connected, healthy, affordable, sustainable, and equitable transportation system for residents across HRM. With significant population growth and rising costs of living in HRM, the IMP's objectives, especially around transit, active transportation, and land use integration, will be even more essential. Finally, as Halifax continues to grow, this coordinated approach to mobility and land use planning will help shape a vibrant, sustainable, and well-connected city for the future. Staff have 3 recommendations for the committee's consideration today. First, that the IMP action update be adopted and used to guide next steps for IMP implementation. Second, that annual updates on implementation progress are made to Council via this committee. And finally, that equity is adopted as a new 5th pillar of the IMP. Siobhan and I thank you and are happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Thank you very much, Siobhan and Mike, for that comprehensive presentation. Are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Do you want me to put the motion on?
Yes, you can do that, I guess.
Okay. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council 1 adopt the Integrated Mobility Plan IMP action update and direct the CO that it be used to guide implementation of the IMP. 2, direct staff to report annually on progress made on the IMP action plan to Regional Council through Transportation Standing Committee. And 3, adopt equity as the 5th pillar of the IMP as set forth in the discussion section of the staff report dated March 19th, 2026 for project planning and evaluation purposes.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary, for the second.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cleary, and thank you to staff and everyone who's turned out today, especially in community, to offer perspective on this. Mr. Campbell referenced, for those of us who've been around and can recall when this came about. And, I think there have been many successes that come out of the IMP. I remember being a rookie counselor and talking to, Mike and Roddy and company around like, hey, Prince Albert Road, like it's 4 lanes wide and totally a traffic sewer over here by the most prettiest asset in the city. Like, but no, could we do something different here? Could we slim this down and make the transition point from city street to highway up by the superstore? And that was totally me as a counselor pushing it. You kind of don't have to do that anymore because you folks have incorporated that sort of review process, that sort of prism has just become standard practice. So I think there's been a lot of success made of the IMP. I want to acknowledge the shortcomings as well, right? We are not where we wanted to be around alternative transportation, and we certainly are not where we wanted to be around road safety. And I think Kathy's comments strike to the quick on that one. So we've made progress, but we also haven't, there's still so much more to do. I do have 3 specific questions. So I'll see if I can get to them in my time left. As we struggle with the data measurement, the census only asks about journey to work. And it only asks, well, what's your primary way of getting to work? If a census taker called me, I would be hard pressed to answer that because today I drove. Some days I take car share. Some days I carpool with colleagues. Some days I take the bus. And some days when the weather's nice for about 8 months of the year, if I can, I bike. So I would struggle to answer that question, and I think it leaves out all sorts of other transportation. Have we had any serious consideration about maybe we should be biting the bullet and every 2 years doing our own survey to get data that is more useful in our world, in our context here in HRM? Because I don't know that the census is ever really going to get us there.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, I'll ask Adam Lannigan to come up and elaborate, but that is something that's on our mind. The census is limiting. Every 5 years, focuses on journey to work. We're working with Link Nova Scotia and our partners there and on collaborating resources to try to find a way to collect better information. Adam's much more well versed in this than I am, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. Adam Lanigan, Senior Program Engineer, Transportation Planning. So directly to your question, Councillor Austin, or through the chair to Councillor Austin, we share your concerns about limitations of the census. It is only about journey to work. A little bit of good news is the 2021 census was the first time that they asked for primary and secondary mode. Okay, so that's good. We at HRM have also performed 2 household activity surveys, one in 2018 and one in 2023, where we did provide a scientific survey randomly distributed to HRM residents to gain more insight beyond the census into travel habits. How many vehicles you own, what were your patterns for the last week. It is a very difficult thing to do well in these days of cell phones. You don't just pick up your landline and talk for half an hour with somebody about a survey, so it's very difficult to do well. So we will not be proceeding with that again this year, but what we are doing this year is proceeding with the Canadian Survey for Everyday Travel, which is being undertaken by Stats Canada this year. We partnered with Link Nova Scotia to purchase a larger sample from that data set. So they'll be collecting a lot more information in the region for us from that, which does go into a lot more detail, not just about how you get to work, but how you travel every day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see I've chewed up my time. I'll come back for my other 2.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for our staff and residents and advocates who engage in this regularly. And I really want to get into things like DALTRAC and HaloTrack and actually what data we're getting from that, but I don't want to chew up my time, so I'll save that for an offline conversation. I'll make one correction. Mr. Bill Campbell said this committee actually approved the IMP in December. It was Regional Council. This committee had seen the draft IMP much earlier, but it was unanimously approved by Council on December 2017. Mr. Mr. Connors, you stated what the IMP was and wasn't. And you stated it's not intended to make driving harder. You know, a cynical person, or myself, could say maybe that's a bit disingenuous. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, who wrote an amazing book called Nudge. And if you want to change behavior, especially at large scale, there are certain things you have to do. If you want people to eat more fruits and vegetables, you put them up further in the cabinet in the cafeteria than the cake, for example. And so if we're not going to make driving harder, how do you intend to achieve our mode shift goals?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, perhaps making it harder is a bad way to say it. It's the plan still recognizes that the driving is a part of the system, and actually, the current mode share targets assume that 70% of people will still drive. So it's not intentionally trying to limit people's ability to drive. It's recognizing the fact that alternate modes are going to have to play a big role in moving in our ability to grow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Specifically getting into some of the action items, when I look at things like action item 5, for example, looking at our fleet and right-sizing our fleet, would that include working with HRFE and their fire apparatus?
Through you, Chair, yes. The intent would be to work with our partners and across the
Have you had any preliminary conversations? Because they very often seem unwilling to work with anything about road safety.
I won't speak for my colleagues, but yes, we have had preliminary conversations with them about this.
Okay. We've had some correspondence, and I really like the idea of putting the equity pillar in place for the IMP. But can you give me a specific example in a project when, for example, a bike lane or reorienting or putting in a new bus lane, how we will use that equity pillar? Because that's one that's come up several times now in our project planning and then implementation and then fixing mistakes that we've made, especially with CNIB, for example.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. We're currently working on an equity-based policy framework that outlines the particular communities of interest where we would focus some of these equity-based expenditures, as well as how we apply that to our decision-making process. So there is an action within the IMP action update that speaks to it's action 6, incorporating the equity policy framework into the way that we make transportation decisions. An example could be if we see a gap in one of these communities of particular concern, for example, in sidewalk or cycling network, it would be prioritized potentially higher. We're still working out through that process, the exact mechanism for that, but it is forthcoming in the next year or so.
So equity in your mind is a very broad spectrum, from everything from, say, ability or challenge to equity deserving groups to socioeconomic status. Okay. For action number 37, this is replacing, I assume it's replacing traffic impact statements with this broader view. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what those traffic studies will look at and how that's different from the current way we do a TIS?
Through you, Chair, I'll start and let Adam add anything if I miss it, but this would be basically amending a process that's been in place for a long time, that is our transportation impact assessment. So, looking at developments and what those impacts are, incorporating multimodal more into it. It's historically been focused on cars, and it would be adding more considerations for all modes.
So looking potentially for conflicts or numbers, because the trip calculators now are based on vehicle trips.
Yes, and it could consider it will consider other modes as well. We're still at the beginning stages of developing that, so that will actually, we're about to start the process soon. So we'll work with a consultant to figure out a good process that's based on best practices elsewhere.
Okay, I'll come back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to take an opposing view on this. Speaking for all the folks in our municipality look at some of these projects and go, what are they thinking? So I also was going to bring up the honesty thing as well here. And I mean, I'm glad to see, at least in your priorities and trade-offs here in the report, you say most often street right-of-way is limited, and to add new features can result in reductions in traffic lane width and or capacity, which impact traffic flow for general traffic. And thank you for being honest, because we have been vilified for saying in certain aspects that, you know, some bike lanes don't actually reduce traffic flow. And in reality, they do. Anytime you reduce a traffic lane or take out a traffic lane to repurpose that space for something else, you are impacting traffic flow. So, which results in congestion. And let's just be honest and say it as it is. One thing that struck me with the original IMP was how aspirational and ideological it was. I felt like it was like we all just need to sing Kumbaya and everything, all of our problems are going to be solved if we can just, you know, do all of this, and without adequately addressing the trade-offs and the challenges. And you know, off the record, you know, I have been told that, yeah, actually it is supposed to increase congestion so that people get so frustrated they get out of their cars. So can we just be honest with what the intent and the purpose is of this? And, okay. Cole Harbour was one of the first suburban areas to receive IMP treatment, and beautiful results. I mean, like aesthetically nice, beautiful street results, but traffic flow, no. Safer for pedestrians, no. Ironically, that the overwhelming correspondence that I received was no. Removing right-hand slip lanes actually increased pedestrians' street walking without islands of safety on the, you know, the busiest intersection in my district. So no, did not improve safety at all. And increased traffic congestion at that set of lights as well in all 3 out of 4 directions. We have special planning areas. I feel like, so this new, this updated version, I've got 2 minutes left. This updated version, I felt like I was excited. I thought this was an opportunity to take the aspirational out of what should have been a solid, common sense approach to mobility that is grounded firmly in reality. The plan mentions Bill 24 a few times, but it fails to link that with its past infrastructure projects that influenced the province to intervene in the first place. So we're going to continue on doing what we've always done, and the province is saying, no, we're going to have the right to interject here and change anything that you do that is going to increase congestion. They're obviously hearing from residents that this is not okay. We also have the new Peninsula Core Street Review that went out. So that's, I just feel like these things are just inherently conflicting. So not sure how this is all going to work together. The special planning areas that the province has announced well, I've got 2 big ones, 3 in my district. Well, one's on the periphery, but adding, you know, the Westfall Urban Reserve, that's 18,000 units that's going to be added. And the IMP is directing us to, you know, repurpose our lanes. So if we have 2 ways out of the Westfall Urban Reserve, and one is Portland Street and one is Main Street, and they are already over capacity, we need to be realistic with what we are planning, with what we're telling the public, and like just be honest. That's okay. Thank you.
I think there were some questions in there for staff.
I don't think there was questions. I
No?
think there was just your negative comments.
Okay, in that case, we'll go to Councillor White then.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks everybody for being here. Reading this over, I see a lot of things I'm really looking forward to. I like the right sizing talk of vehicles. I like the construction mitigation. That's something that's on my mind. There's so few sidewalks available for people. The last kilometer delivery is super exciting to see those things go forward. I don't know if, and the link to road safety, I don't know if I said that or not. I also have lots of hesitations with things. Okay. The emergency response times, it's just, at one point it was mentioned twice in the staff report, not so much in the IMP action plan, but it's mentioned in there twice, and once it's mentioned as potential. I'm concerned with the amount of airtime that's getting here versus road safety. Like, we have hundreds of people injured every year. I'm concerned about that. If you could talk to why that's getting so much airtime there. And then the other thing I want to talk about is this mode shift. Councillor Cleary alluded to it. You know, there's other cities making big strides in this stuff. And a lot of them, you know, they're not saying COVID was a problem. They embraced COVID and the way people changed getting around, and they reclaimed space at that time for people, for moving and for greenery and whatnot. So why are we not looking more at road reallocation? Because it's so much cheaper and so much faster. So I'll start with those, I guess. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. Excuse me. With respect to emergency response time, it's simply mentioned in the report twice, just as a consideration for trade-offs that, you know, are something we consider through the process. In terms of airtime, I think we're not really, it's not really influencing a lot here. We're just kind of pointing out that as a consideration. And in terms of mode shift, you know, we are considering, we have reallocated lanes for transit, for active transportation, and you know, one of the actions in the update here will direct us to continue to consider that as part of the bus rapid transit implementation and transit priority. So it's certainly on our radar, and you know, if we're going to move toward BRT, that will have to be a part of that implementation. So it's something we're considering. There's trade-offs, and we'll have to bring that to council for its consideration.
Wonderful. Keep bringing them. So when I was thinking about that, you did mention how many, about 10K of road space has gone to dedicated bus lanes. Do you have any numbers like that for active transportation? Because, again, I guess to counter Councillor Purdy's comments, like 10 kilometers out of all the roads in HRM going to bus lanes is peanuts. I guess I feel it's the same for active. And do you have a number on that?
So just to clarify, the 10 kilometers that we mentioned, that's the number of, that's the kilometers of dedicated bus lanes in general that have been added since the IMP implementation 2017. So that's reallocation of space on Gottingen Street. That's also bus lanes added on Bayers Road through widening. So we have, I don't have exact numbers on how much space has been reallocated for active transportation, but as mentioned, we have 36 kilometers of bike lanes that have been added, and I believe 22 kilometers of multi-use paths. So those are the numbers. I don't know exactly how much of that's reallocation. Some of it's widening to add those facilities.
Okay. It's just, I just don't see much at all. So let me think about, I only got a minute left here. Oh yes, monitoring and evaluating. That's a good piece. I was wondering if part of that will be about the design features, the way that we're putting in this infrastructure. I guess I'm thinking cycling in my mind, but anything we're doing here, are we going to be looking at, oh, that method didn't work so great, or maybe we could try a different product, that sort of thing?
Yes, all of the above. Like the intent, I guess our main intent was to understand when we make these changes, how are they making are they making a change? So for example, if we put in a bus lane, how is that moving transit better? What are the impacts on other uses? So, we have a good idea, and we do that kind of ad hoc now, but having a better system to kind of monitor that over time. And yeah, like, sure, active transportation too. How are the changes that we're making? Are they resulting in more people biking? Are the people that are riding bikes? Are there things they're experiencing through the use of those facilities that can be improved? We would consider all of that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for allowing a guest councillor to ask a question. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, I came today because I read the report, I wanted to hear the presentation, and it's really to learn a lot more. So I don't have questions that are as detailed as maybe the colleagues that are on this committee would, but Councillor Clary asked about the equity pillar, and I am a little concerned about how that might be applied. When you think about like a social value lens, what that lens actually looks like. And one of the words that was in the equity pillar that gave me the most pause was probably underserved. And the definition of underserved, especially like when you think about transit, for example, if you have a park and ride, does that mean that you have transit service? Or is underserved just outside of the transit service boundary? Like how you will define some of that stuff. And then the newly announced study that's being done with the province around and with Link, I guess. I'm just wondering how that impacts any of this, and if it does, or if it's seen as complementary to the action plans here. And in the rural, when you look at that summary page that's in the report, you see the entire municipality, urban and suburban, and then urban and suburban, and then you see rural. And in almost every one other than rural, you see implement, design, develop, and then in the rural, you see pilot. So when I look at this integrated mobility plan, the thing that in the rural part of the district that I support, they find it very challenging to see themselves in this integrated mobility plan. And you really have to look in the weeds to find it. So even in terms of, just as an example, the active transportation, it says implementing the rural active transportation program in rural pilot community sites. So are those sites already chosen? I know that there's at least 2 that, in District 1, we've been looking at the rural active transportation and wanting to see what we can do. But even when we look at that, we're all looking at in the rural, in combination with the equity lens, we're looking at rural paths and sidewalks and trails, but it's also going to be an LIC charge to residents. So where does the equity pillar fit with, if you're looking at rural active transportation? Because that's underserved, et cetera. So those are my questions. Thank you. But it was a good read.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. I'll start speaking about the equity pillar and talk about rural, then hand over to Mike. So with the piece about equity, you mentioned how do we define whether a community is well-served or underserved. That's something that we're currently working on as we flesh out the equity-based policy framework with the community safety team. So we have mapped out, or we're in the process of mapping out access to different types of infrastructure and municipal facilities across the municipality, and comparing access at kind of a urban, rural, suburban level, and just sort of doing, right now it's a relative comparison, but that's something that the group is grappling with about how do we define this. So I think more conversations are to come as part of that process over the coming months, just to pin down exactly what that means and how we apply it. And then about the actions relating to rural areas and being seen as pilot. If we flip to 27 in the report, some of the actions listed applying to rural areas, it's implementing our rural AT program in the pilot community areas. So the rural AT program would have been something that was already approved by council. I believe that there were some pilot areas or some areas that they were going to go out and engage and sort of try the new process that was developed through that. And yes, you're correct that there is consideration of land improvement charges as part of that. It is an interesting piece that you connect it through to equity, and we'll need to kind of bring that back. I know it's something that's been evolving.
Good. Yeah, I was trying to remember the pilot sites. So I think there was 5 areas that were approved or something like that. Yeah, thanks. But I'm not sure all 5 areas actually had even applications in. So,
through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I could speak quickly to the Peninsula study that was released, I guess, yesterday in the news. So remind the committee that is a study that's shared between HRM and the province. So we're co-managing that study and very excited about what that will look at for the peninsula. And we don't have a specific action in the plan on it, I don't believe, but it does. One of the actions in the plan speaks to collaborating with partner agencies on multimodal connections. So we're definitely really that study plays right into this action plan for sure. And it's action 12, so it's an important action for us. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I'll speak a little bit to Eeyore here. Maybe I'll lead with the Winnie the Poohism, oh bother. So, I mean, I guess if we're talking about being honest with people about where we are here, there's not a city out there that's growing, that's improving car congestion. It's impossible to do. We do not have the money. We do not have the space. You can't do it. Like, this is not 1960 anymore, and so we have to change how we're doing it. And so we get to choose how bad things get. And so it's not that anyone's deciding to make congestion worse. Congestion is going to get worse in some measure. It's a question of how much worse and whether or not people have alternatives that they can get out of it in. And so that's really the truth of it. I mean, there's not, if there was some other alternative around, like, hey, here's how we can continue to move people in single occupant vehicles on limited space, I think we'd probably do it. I mean, our provincial government definitely would, but it's just not there. So it becomes what are we going to do? How much is it going to cost? How quickly is it going to cost? And how far do we want to push it in terms of trade-offs? That's really what this is about in terms of, and the only options, it's transit, which I think we're all pretty all around this table, no matter what philosophical place we're coming from. It is one thing that we all seem to actually agree on, as I think was very clear in our budget deliberations. And it's active transportation, which is a little bit more in a bike lash sort of contentious cultural space right now. But those are it, right? So I think that's the honest truth of it myself, right? So in terms of my last 2 questions, I'm just going to throw them back out here because your second go around goes quick. I wanted to know a little bit about the road classification piece, because that was in there as an unfinished item, and it's been obviously seen somewhere in there as important enough to carry forward. So I'm just wondering what we're looking at doing on that. And then the other is what happened to, as I recall, when the Red Book updates were when council first approved the Red Book updates, the idea was that would become an evergreen sort of process. You'd show up like once a year with those. And as I recall, we saw them once and we've never seen them again. So we haven't really adopted what was intended there. And that's an item in here. So I'm wondering if I could just get some more information on both of those 2 things.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I'm not sure if somebody from Public Works is able to speak to the municipal design guidelines, but in terms of road classification, that's one of the original actions, one that we've looked at. It's a pretty big undertaking. We just haven't gotten around to doing it yet. It's quite important to to rationalize the street classification scheme. It's been around for a long time, and it has operational implications. It has design implications. It has complete streets implications. So how do we prioritize what and where? So it remains a priority. We just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Is the intent to like totally redo them into totally new things, or is it mainly just to review and say, well, arterial still is arterial type thing?
So a strategy was completed, I think, in 2016 that looked at a variety of options. Lots of different cities do it in different ways. Could be tweaking what we already have now, or it could be something completely transformational. We need to get together at staff and figure out what makes sense. Because as I mentioned, it goes to operational, it goes to design. It has wide-ranging impacts. So there's no one right way to do it, but we'd like to kind of learn from how other cities have successfully updated their classification.
Good afternoon, Lucas Pitts, Executive Director of Public Works on the Municipal Design Guidelines. We'll be in front of Council in a couple months with an update to the MDG, primarily around the accessibility changes. We're going to have a further update in the following year, but we do want to do some consultation with the industry first. Remembering that the MDG is just a guideline. It is not a requirement. It solidifies design standards no matter what design we choose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't hate the whole thing. There was obviously. Okay. But, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time in the 100-acre woods lately, so that's kind of my my thing outside of here. So Eeyore's, he's just so cute. Okay. Yeah, being honest, actually, I just have a process question. I mean, I could say so much more, but I won't. Is this being moved to Regional Council as an information item, or is it going to be an item on the agenda? It's not clear to me from the motion here. Is it going to be an agenda item? Or do we have to ask for the presentation to be given at Regional Council? It would be can I make a recommendation? I feel like this is a big item to present at Regional Council and not just be an information item. Is that appropriate at this point?
So through the chair, so this would be going as a recommendation report to Regional Council, if the committee votes on the motion to move forward.
So would the presentation be included in that?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. That would be up to the at agenda review to have that decided. But staff are certainly ready to do that if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's funny, all this talk about Winnie the Pooh. I guess with my colleagues, Councillors Eeyore and Winnie the Pooh over there, that makes me Councillor Tigger. I'm actually quite bouncy and excited about the benefits that we get from the IMP. I guess this is more rapid fire. So on the data, so several times we mentioned we want to collect better and more data. I see Adam nodding. Okay. So things like, and I'll just put it out there. So things like, and you don't have to respond to this, I don't think, but things like emergency response, because it's come up. I'm hoping that means we force HRFE and police and EHS to demonstrate kind of pre-post response times, so that it's not just as we had here for council and budget committee meeting, kind of a gut instinct, oh, I don't like speed humps, so I don't think you should have them. So would we actually collect real data on that kind of stuff? I see hesitation.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe Halifax Fire will be coming with a report on response time, so we would leave that to them to address. Yeah.
Okay, so on other things related to data, and especially when I look at Action 3 and possibly Action 16, we don't currently track vehicle kilometers traveled. Lots of other municipalities do. They usually sample it representative on a number of streets and then make estimates. Will part of our data collection be looking at, I guess what Americans call VMT, what we would call vehicle kilometers traveled?
Through the chair to the council, yes, absolutely. We're looking at a number of different data sources at the moment, including big data that's collected regionally, which will help us, inform that conversation. And we can also use our regional travel demand forecasting model to help estimate the VKT for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're trying to shift mode, if we're trying to understand, if we're getting the impact we're getting, say, from transit on a particular street, we need to know how many vehicle kilometers are being traveled, and then after the fact that we implemented, how many now are being so I'm happy to hear that. For action item number 2, does that impact construction mitigation plans that developers currently have to put in? Are we just talking road construction, or is it also private property development and the impact on sidewalks or those kind of things as well?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, I'm looking at Action 2. That's our monitoring and evaluation framework. Could you mean Action 7, which is the coordination of road work and construction closures around strategic corridors? Just for clarification.
I thought I saw it in... So 2 is develop and apply a consistent framework to monitor and evaluate multimodal changes to the transportation network. You had things like evaluate the impacts of transportation projects, construction closures, and other temporary changes. So is that just road construction, or is it other types of construction that impact the right-of-way?
Through the chair to the councillor, I believe that was put in there thinking primarily about roadway construction closures. So an example recently would have been the closure of Barrington Street at Scotia Square for the construction of Cogswell Interchange. We were doing some monitoring of the traffic impacts of something like that. For individual developments, if there is a closure of a lane or a reduction in the roadway, we could potentially look at something like that, and I believe that's something that would be fleshed out by the framework that's developed.
Okay, I'm out of time. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I thought I heard from our public participation speakers was, a request about more public engagement. And I know in the report, it was staff initiated, and, there was engagement with the mayor and councillors, and then the community interest group, and it listed the groups that were involved. So I'm just wondering, why would there be a disconnect between public thinking they should be more engagement, but the report says that we did have external engagement? Can you just speak a little bit to the invitation that was presented to people to participate from the community?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the engagement process involved the groups that Siobhan had mentioned in the presentation through development, I guess through 2 different stages, I believe. So it was understanding the review of the IMP, does this vision make sense? Do these actions make sense? And then through rationalization of the action. So, we engaged earlier on in the process. That's when that engagement happened to happen. Anything else?
Through the chair to the councillor, we were engaging with them about sort of our process for doing this action update, as well as gathering some of their ideas about gaps and priorities that could be shifted with this update. So I think that's where they provided the majority of the feedback, but this was in spring of 2025.
Okay, so not necessarily what is in this report as terms of the updated action plan, not consultation on that part.
Correct. The 39 actions weren't necessarily in front of those groups at that time. We were just talking at a higher level.
Okay. And is there any consideration, even if, council, this goes to council and it does get approved, is there any consideration to sit with those, come back and bring those interest groups together again to talk about where we're at?
Certainly we engage with those groups frequently. Be happy to sit down with those groups and look at the action plan and discuss the next steps.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor White, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to follow on what Councillor Dago Gammon was saying there. What you recommend against going out for public consultation due to timing. I'm just wondering, with the interest in it and the fact that we already have an IMP, like what's the big downside to going out to speak to people?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, it comes down to time and staff resources. We heard pretty loud and clear through the process that the vision and the principles are still relevant. If the committee and council likes, we can do that. But as we mentioned, we're talking several months of engagement, and that's time that staff aren't implementing the plan. They're engaging, so that's the rationale.
Okay, something else is falling off. Okay. On pilots are great. I'll take more pilots if we can do them, because you can try things and it didn't work, you can go back. So I think that is a way we should consider trying things and not being afraid, because they're temporary. I wanted to ask about the mode shift target question, because yes, we talked about this when we talked about the regional plan. We've noticed this, that we know we're on track to have way more cars. So can you talk about how we're going to move forward on getting better targets for the different areas of the municipality? Because we know 70% is not going to cut it for us.
Through the chair to the councillor, we share all the concerns that were raised today. This plan is bringing the IMP to 2031, so just to the end of plan. So through the regional planning process, we were looking beyond to that doubling of population, to more aggressive mode share targets, to what a vision of a city of 1 million people would look like. So as this plan comes to the end of life, that's when we could start to have those discussions. And as the regional plan, I'm not sure if any of our planning and development staff are here to speak to where that sits right now.
No, that makes sense, because this 2031 sooner than we think. Just within my last minute, I'll ask about the EV charging. I'm wondering why we would consider curbside for that, because our curbside is so valuable for so many things, as opposed to parking lots and whatnot.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there is an action in there about developing a working group for fleshing out the approach to curbside EV charging as a municipality, what our approach should be. There is an approved, council-approved EV strategy that does speak to EV charging at on-site at municipal recreation centers, as well as curbside. So it would be sort of following up on that approved direction to install and move forward with some curbside EV charging, but there's still some logistics that need to be fleshed out around responsibilities and upgrades to the NS Power grid associated with some of the EV chargers, also prioritizing where those might be and if that's something we want to move forward with as a municipality.
Or not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question around new action item number 24 in terms of a marketing and communications plan for the proposed BRT system. The idea is we go out and speak to residents about the BRT. I agree with having a marketing plan, particularly around using transit. But I'm curious about the BRT in the sense of we're still a ways out, are we not? So I'm wondering if it might not be better to spend more time on marketing transit overall and maybe, building momentum and interest in BRT. I was just curious by that. And I see it as a short-term thing. That's why I was curious. Because I know when residents ask me about BRT, I sort of say, well, it's not funded yet. And we need other levels of government to support us, but perhaps I'm not giving the right answer.
Through you, Madam Chair. So that, along with 2 or 3 other actions in the transit section, are about kind of readying ourselves for BRT. Recognize that there's a few big hurdles to get through before BRT is a reality, but it's it's about getting ready for that. And I think some internal work's already been done on that, but being able to communicate more effectively with residents about what BRT is and how it influences some of the major projects that we're working on, right? Roby Street, for example, like these are transformational projects, and if we can talk more clearly with residents about the potential for BRT, that we see that as being beneficial.
Okay, I was thinking more generically and not specifically around Roby Street. Okay.
Just to clarify, not specific to Roby, but like that's just an example of a project where there's impacts, and if we can describe that in the context of BRT, it helps people understand why some of those trade-offs are being made.
And we actually needed the Roby Street stuff sort of yesterday or maybe last year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone on the request list, but I had a couple questions I'd like to ask from the chair, if that's all right with everyone. I wondered if you could just talk a bit about what happens if we don't get the mode share to transit in the next few years. Does that, as our population grows, what kind of gridlock are we looking at, or what is the scenario that you've pictured? I think sometimes it can be helpful when we're communicating to understand what it is, the problem that we're trying to avoid. So I'm just trying to get a sense of if your numbers, if you have numbers like that, or if you have a picture you can draw for us on that. Also, on the needing more robust data and evaluation, what are the gaps that we see now? I think there was a mention of more equipment is needed or something like that. So if you could spell that a little bit more, please. And also, when will the equity decision tool be available and ready? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start on the first one, and then the second one, maybe Adam can take it, and I'll pass it over to Siobhan on the equity. So, good question on what happens if we don't achieve the transit mode share. That's you're going to see congestion continue to worsen, and it'll be harder for people to get around. It's hard to model that with a lot of accuracy, but that's kind of that's kind of the obvious thing that we would see happening. And then ultimately, it hampers the ability for the region to grow. If we don't see more people move to transit, then we just can't grow without everything becoming congested.
Madam Chair, so speaking to data, there are holes in our data at all levels, at a regional level and locally. So we've started work, and I believe it's in Council's strategic plan as well, on a regional data strategy. So we've been working with our partners at Link Nova Scotia on that for a while, and we're starting an internal initiative now to take stock of everything that we do have, how it's being used, what's missing, what does everybody need, what are we missing to tell the stories that we need to about our transportation system. So that will have, in the end, the strategy that we come up with will illustrate those gaps, propose solutions to solving those gaps, and talk about what resources may be required to support an improved strategy for data.
And to the chair, speaking to the equity-based policy framework, I would need to follow up with you on that about the exact timing of when that will be completed. There have been some staffing changes on the project, but I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Young has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with regards to the ongoing provincial alignment, so are you guys consistently corresponding with the province on this, especially based on Bill 24, as you mentioned, and any kind of future planning, like an SBA's that the province are looking into? You guys are aligning with the province with that. That's number one. Number two, on the equity one, the fifth pillar, why did it take so long to include that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll start. So in terms of alignment with the province, we do have alignment with, or we work closely with our counterparts at the province, both at the executive level, with Dave Rigi and others with their executive, and then we have staff that work together with their staff. And there's processes related to Bill 24 around evaluating impacts to traffic capacity that we're working through, and that relates to the All Ages and Abilities Bicycle Network right now. So, and as mentioned earlier, around the Peninsula Corridor study, that's a joint effort. So right now there's very good collaboration with the province, and we've reviewed their transportation plan, and it's well aligned with this work too. So that's an important consideration.
Okay. Number 2.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I'll speak to the equity piece. In 2017, the IMP spoke to equity in a less direct sort of way when thinking about affordability and accessibility, but it wasn't as explicitly incorporated as a pillar. So 8 years later, and sort of to align with other plans and policies that have been speaking more directly to equity, we just wanted to bring that in line with everything else and incorporate that 5th pillar now when we had the opportunity.
So is that continuing to be ongoing too as well, with the feedback from community that it's mentioned in there, it's underserved. So their feedback, is it being heard and implemented as you guys go in community to get the feedback?
Yes, so as part of the equity-based policy framework, there is an engagement component. So they have been going out into some of these target communities of interest to make sure that the tool is developed with feedback opportunities and those voices in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Thank you to our presenters. Could I have the question? Ready? Question? All those in favor? Sorry? Raise your hand. Sorry. All those in favor of the report? Oh.
Just the councillors. So yourself, Councillor Clary, sorry, not Councillor Steele, Councillor Clary, Councillor Young, and Councillor Murphy. And yourself.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's headed to regional council. So it's unanimous then. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. The motion carries. There are no motions. There's nothing in camera. No added items or notices of motion. So, are there any notices of motion? Sorry. Committee members? Seeing none, the date of our next meeting is April 23rd, 2026. Call for adjournment. Thank you.